what are the principles of experimental design? And this is the part that you guys can talk to me or you can put it in the chat. So what are the principles of experimental design?
Was it repetition and something else? I can't.
Yep, on the right track. So it's not repetition, it's a replication, but very close. So replication is one of them. What are the other two?
Randomization.
Randomization is the second one. Great. And what's the third one?
Local control.
Local control. Awesome. Okay, so you guys need to get in the habit of chanting those things over and over and over again. So randomization, replication, local control. Randomization, replication, local control. And the reason for this is because as we move into the application part of this class, when we look at research project scenarios as examples, those are the three things that you are going to check off in your mind to make sure that they are addressed in the scenario. Okay, and if not, then you need to raise that point that is probably not a very integrous research project because they haven't addressed one of those three parameters. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's look at Blackboard together so we know what's coming up this week. All right, so we are officially in week number 7. And last week, you guys talked through principles or learned about principles of experimental design. And this week, and statistical power, you did that last week as well. So no statistical powers this week, never mind. And so this week we are jumping off into statistics, okay? And so these are what I call descriptive statistics. And most of them you guys have probably been exposed to before. So these are things like averages or means, medians, mode, variation, right? And we're going to also talk a little bit about confidence intervals. And then the last set or the last set of lectures this week are about statistical power. And so statistical power is really, really important because it's going to determine how many experimental units we have. And so experimental unit accuracy is really important to uphold an integrous research project. So if we have a difference, that we're able to detect it if it's there. And the other side of that is that we don't have too many experimental units where we're wasting time and money. And so statistical power is going to be a really big piece of this. And so next week, we're going to jump into how these descriptive statistics as well as statistical power fit into the compost research project. And we're also going to go through the materials and methods for the compost project next week. So next week is definitely a week not to miss because you're going to take information that is presented in that discussion section and you're going to basically morph it into the second half of part 2. All right, so as far as this week, what is due this week, October 8th, is this intro to stats and statistical power quiz. Okay, and so you're allowed to, this is timed. I think you've got 2 hours to get it done. You can have your notes, a scratch paper, and a calculator. Please don't use other classmates or other people as resources. All right, so you will definitely need a calculator though, unless you're super brainy and are way better than me about like doing math in your head. So, okay, so that's what we've got going this week. All right, so as far as what the rest of the month really looks like, the first thing I want to let you guys know is that when it comes to the bigger research project, so let me reshare this again. the research paper assignment, I went back in and kind of reassessed not only my schedule, but what I know is coming up in the College of Ag as far as advising. And that takes a whole lot of time and effort on my part. And so I tend to get really bogged down this time of the semester. So in an effort to alleviate some stress on you guys and myself, I went in just recently and changed part 2 to be due a week later. So part 2 is now due Friday, October 29th by the end of day. All right, so part 2 is now due October 29th by the end of day. So we've basically got 3.5 weeks to work through part 2. And so this section of the bigger research project is what you've done through part 1, which was outlining the introduction section. And so you're going to write up the introduction section, and you're also going to write up materials and methods. And so that's why being present next week is so essential. So I'm going to take you through step by step how we are conducting the project, the data that we're collecting, the timing that we're collecting the data in. And then I'm also going to take you through a really quick outline of how materials and methods should be structured. And because we're not in person, I've found that being as specific as possible is really helpful. So I get down to the detail of, like, in paragraph 1 of materials and methods should be this, paragraph 2 should be this, etc. And so you're definitely going to want to tune in next week. So that's the first announcement, is that part 2 due date is now October 29th. As far as discussion next week, that is going to be all about the materials and methods for the compost project. And so you'll take that information and morph it into part 2. The following week, which is the October 18th, Monday, October 18th, we will not have discussion. So you guys can use that time to work on part 1. So, and I'll remind you of all this in the weekly briefings, but I have to be out of town at a conference in Colorado. And then the following week, the week of Monday, October 25th, we will do discussion that Monday. That'll be a writing workshop. And then I will also have writing workshops on Wednesday, the 27th from 8 to 9, and on Friday, the 29th from 8 to 9 a.m. as well. And so lots of opportunities to get some help, and you can always schedule appointments with me as well. So that is kind of all the announcements. So a lot of different stuff going on. I'm going to put all of this in the weekly briefing that'll come out on Friday. So, and you guys can always refer back to this video for reference. So with that, what questions can I answer for you about the research project, due dates, projects, all of that good stuff? Okay, no questions. If you have them later, you know where to find me. Okay, what I would like to do is, I'm not going to keep you guys very long. I just want to talk specifically about probably the next step to take for part 2, which is going to be taking what you wrote for part 1 and morphing it into that 5-paragraph essay, which will be the first part of part 2. And so a good video to go back and watch is the one that I posted like 2.5 weeks ago on a Thursday. It was kind of random, where I matched up the outline with a final copy of a research paper from a previous class. And so I would also encourage you to read through the example paper that's on Blackboard as well. And you can start morphing that outline into full sentences and stuff. And some of you guys have already done that, and that's totally fine. I told you to just to keep that document so you had it kind of done. But now really the next step is to start putting whole sentences together from the fragments that you put into your outline. And so I would encourage you to do that sooner rather than later, because we are we're going to spend a lot of time in kind of a new area next week, which is materials and methods. So we're going to not only be talking about how the project was carried out, but why it was designed the way that it was. And so I've got a comment. Yes, so I'm working on comments back for part 1 right now and grading that. So that will be, it's my intent to get through all of those this week. So I've already started on a few of them. And so if you guys have had met with me either during workshops or been in contact on email and stuff last week, I met with a lot of people individually last week, and you know, we're pretty set as far as what your themes were and those type of things. You can probably go ahead and start this reiterative process of taking that outline and putting it into the full 5-paragraph format. So I feel pretty comfortable with where the class is at as far as themes, hook sentences, and that type of thing as a whole, just based on the conversations that I had. So you don't necessarily have to wait for comments from me. You can go ahead and get the infrastructure over into the 5-paragraph outline and then just make tweaks when you get feedback from me as well. So, all right. I did have a question on where to find the example paper. So let me go back to that. All right, so in the research project module that is underneath announcements over here on the left-hand side, oh, it's not here. It's probably in a weekly folder. My guess is week 5. Okay. We have part 1, but I don't have the full one up. Okay, I will get that up. So Tyler, I think you asked that question about where it will be. Actually, nope, it's in writing resources, right? Yes. So, okay, so in writing resources, which is below the research project, if you scroll all the way down, you will see some really good sample research papers. And so these are from students in previous classes. I have permission to actually share their papers with you. And so these are students that got A's that did a really good job kind of stepping this out. And so with this information, you guys can go through. I would encourage you to read it, you know, top to bottom, and to really start to take notes on each section and what each section has in it. So you've been exposed to this from a lecture point of view, but it's been all in generalities, okay? And so sometimes it's easier to see specific examples of what is included in each section. And so that's why you've got some example papers in here, because I'll be honest, for me, it's easier to learn from somebody else, and that kind of went ahead of me. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was offered as a learning style too, so we can use other people's work to kind of help us fine tune our work. All right, so I think that answered that question. I'm going to hang out and answer any questions you guys may have. I don't have anything formal as far as an activity or anything to do today. I would encourage you to use this time to either start watching through the lecture videos or to start working on morphing part 1 into part 2. There is definitely plenty to do. And so, like I said, I will hang out for a few minutes. If you guys want to stay on and work, that's fine. If you want to jump off, I will plan on seeing you next Monday. So just please don't forget about the quiz that is due on Friday by end of day.